Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jose Ortiz.
And I'm Mario Benitez. And if you ever sat there and thought about what data is, what it says about you, and the algorithm that feeds you what you watch, we're diving right into that with data scientist, comedian, and circus performer Andrea Jones-Rooy.
Of course, guys, if you're new to the channel or if you've been here before, feel free to hit like and subscribe and leave a comment below to let us know what you think. This is another episode of Saturday Gigantic. I was at the memorial yesterday.
How was it?
Heavy.
Heavy?
Always.
Yeah.
Especially around this time, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I went into the museum, into the actual museum to get footage for my video, but I've been to the museum before, and it's not something I want to go see again.
Yeah.
So I just rushed through it to go to the places I wanted
It's
to go
too sad. I actually have not been. I go outside and I'll look. Like I went on the 20th anniversary and it was all very depressing. And when I'm down there, I usually pause, but I can't bring myself to go to the museum. It just seems
that
too sad.
museum is it's.
I know I should, but I just.
Yeah, everybody should do it,
Yeah.
but it's definitely some shit that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
Really?
You think you're gonna go there and see pictures and shit. Like they have some really in-depth shit, bro. Like
Yeah.
there's shit that was still. There's shit still covered in dust in the museum.
Wow.
There's shoes with blood on them. There's everything's there. It's crazy. Everything shit that families donated that they recovered from victims is on display.
Have you been?
I haven't been yet.
No.
You know, I
Yeah.
feel like I know how heavy that is, so
Yeah.
I almost stay away.
Same.
And I've lived through it.
I'll have friends who visit and they'll go.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh no, I live here. I'll go some other time. And then we could meet up later, and they're all just depressed.
Yeah,
You're
that's
just
Yeah.
oh.
I mean, it's one of them things where it's gonna close. That museum ain't gonna be around forever.
Really?
Yeah, that shit is. They're not making money.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they
So you think they will close it?
they already talked about it.
Wow, that's
It's
weird.
come up. That's why I made.
I thought it was a memorial thing,
Yeah, that's what
It
too.
is, but they to keep that shit open, it takes a lot.
I did see a flyer on the way here. It was one of the few show flyers that actually I paused to look at, and it said, playing now on Broadway, 9/11 the musical.
No.
And I was just like, this... I was like, I hope it's a joke, but then I was like, it probably... Shouldn't be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it's a drama, it's like
I had so many emotions about it. I was like, oh, this...
somebody's gonna play the plane and shit.
No, it all
that's
sounds so bad.
fucked
Yeah.
up.
A musical is fucked up.
It's so
bro.
fucked up.
Yeah. Wait, it's a musical?
It was like a handwritten sign. It said
Oh.
9/11 the musical.
Oh, it was. Oh, yeah, that's ridiculous.
I mean, it's just some pop-up show. I halfway want to go just to be like, what the hell? If you're looking for some B-roll footage, I
Yeah.
think I'll send you the flyer tomorrow.
Wow.
It turns out it's all inside job, truthers and stuff.
Yo, the amount of truthers. The video I have on last year's 9/11 has almost 2 million views now.
Yeah.
And the amount of people in there in my comments saying that truther shit is nuts.
Some people don't even believe it happened at all these days, right?
Bro, I gave up.
That's
It turns out you can just believe whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's the new rule. It
I
seems.
gave up. People just be like, oh, planes can't do that. I'm like, how often do you see planes doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You act like
what-
you have so many times to compare it.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
subset of data
Yeah, exactly.
do you have to
And
compare
then,
these things?
Yeah.
The greatest part is the Institute of Research or whatever that did NIST, who did the National Institute of whatever. They fucking did all the data and they compiled everything, put it into every type of diagram and everything you can think of. It's in writing. You can find it for the last 20 years. And people still want you to believe them
Right.
in the comments over professionals.
Right.
Yeah.
And the medical examiner's office and the scientists and the people
Right.
who dedicated their lives to explaining this type of shit.
People with expertise.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But they'll come, some fucking dummy
Right.
will come out and be like, demolitions experts will tell you this is not possible. Like,
And you're like,
they're
oh, I
not
guess I'll
experts.
just throw that out and listen to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
let's fuck that. Let's
Yeah.
listen to this guy.
Well, and it's also anytime you have those conspiracy things, it's all government officials and the congressional report on it and all this stuff that they put together. It's like, you think we're organized enough to fake all of that? Have you
That
been to the post
thousands
office?
of people.
No one in the government, I trust the government more than maybe I should, but they can't pull that shit off.
Yeah,
at all.
it takes 2 seconds to dismantle every argument that's ever come out of that. But because people are they're always being hypocrites about it.
Yeah.
You call George Bush the dumbest motherfucker on earth, but you think he planned this whole shit.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
his
It doesn't make
administration
sense.
made this happen.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing about them finding one of the hijackers' passport in the rubble. I'm like, so you think that they wouldn't realize how stupid that sounds?
Yeah.
You don't think
Yeah.
it's possible that it was just like some weird shit that it was an anomaly. They found it.
Yeah.
Like they found a bunch of other shit. It's not like there are natural disasters all the time, earthquakes and chaotic events where shit is in rubble and in fire and people survive. Stuff survives, black boxes, shit on planes, survives all the fucking time.
Yeah.
You find debris from like the Titanic, like fucking hundreds, like how fucking long ago was that? And they're still finding like little. Oh, we found a treasure chest with coins in it,
a teacup.
Like what the fuck? You're weird that a plane flew into a building and a bunch of shit blew out of the other side into the street. You find that weird? Like that's not that crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it takes a lot less effort to believe the truth than believe some extra shit that you're talking about.
That's like information bias, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, they just want that one thing to be true.
Right.
So it's everything that they take in is like, they're going to always look at a certain direction. Like, oh, no, it's going to be this and that.
Right.
And the problem is that there really is some messed up stuff within government.
Right.
And that, but they don't, I always say this, they never talk about the real conspiracies.
Right.
Like, you don't hear enough about them. Like, there's been real things done. Even, like, the idea of Vietnam still, even though that's as long ago as it is.
Right.
But that was fake. Like, they went into that Gulf of Tonkin Act thing that they said the PT cruisers got shot down. I forgot that. Yeah, that was all made up.
Oh.
So they attacked Vietnam off of, like, just a lie.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they attacked Iraq on it, too, right?
Yeah, the same thing.
Like,
weapons
where are
of
the
mass
weapons of mass destruction? You're like,
Oh, there was none.
It didn't have shit to do with nothing.
Yeah. And it's like, so...
See, so shit like that, it's like, that's obvious, but the other stuff is like...
Yeah.
You don't think a plane had nothing to do with
Yeah,
it?
that's
Where's
just...
all the plane debris? It was all over the fucking place.
Blew up.
Yeah.
Have you not seen that one video of the engines on the floor, wings? There's shit all over New York.
I will confess that I have fallen in conspiracy theory rabbit holes around the Malaysia Airlines flight. You know, the one that was like flying to Beijing and
they didn't know where it
disappeared
to.
Like when it happened, I kind of lost my tether on reality and was reading all these weird things. And then like a year ago, I think it was around when the submersible happened. I was like, what else is insane that I can read about? Like, oh, MH450 whatever. And there are some wild conspiracies that like the Russians have it, or it disappeared, or it was like purposely, it was a stupid, like, and so you can really get lost on.
Yeah, I think.
But it's the information, it's the bias that you were talking about, which is like, if I decide that it was Russia that did 9/11, I can find information that says
all the time, and you're gonna seek that, like,
yeah,
and you're gonna connect those.
And
dots.
anything I find that won't support that, I'll be like, well, you can't trust this outlet, you can't trust that outlet, and I'll find some comment on the internet and be like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
okay.
Like people, like the whole thing with people jumping out of the towers. Like some people fell, some people clearly jumped. Right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I remember when the news didn't show any of this because it was all edited for lies. I'm like, bro, you wanted them to show people jumping.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't show it because
they stood on the front of the building on the north side. It was in between the two towers that everyone was jumping.
And they did have footage like it.
That shit is all over
happening.
the place.
Yeah, like it's horrific.
None of that shit's hard to find. Like that's the part that pisses me off about it. Like, bro, you don't be slow all your life.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that.
Were you in New York?
Yeah, I was downtown.
Did you see it? Oh, wow.
I was downtown. I went to school at Washington Irving.
Oh, wow.
And that's near Union Square. It's 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
So when it happened, they're telling everyone through the loudspeakers that we have to stay in the building. They're not letting anybody leave. I look at my boy Oswaldo. You remember my boy?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're getting the fuck out of here. As soon as the bell rang, we cut. We just left. And Irving Plaza had a group of people. Remember that bar with the TVs? That was right next to
Irving Plaza. Yeah.
Everyone was just there, like, looking at that shit in awe. So we start walking. There's something we always did. We walked to 6th Ave to take the 2 train. Or to walk down there to take the 2 to 96. And then I would transfer to the 1 to go to our block. But the second my boy saw, because when you go to 6th Ave, if you look down to the left, you could just see smoke, and it just looks like some end of the world shit. He got mad scared, and he was like, yo, I'm just gonna go back to school and wait for my father to pick me up.
Wow.
And I was like, all right. So he just bounced. He went back to the school, and I walked uptown by myself.
All the way up here?
Yeah, I had spoke to Gio. Gio had like a working cell phone at the time. I called him.
Which was like a brick back then.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Zach Morris.
Yeah. I called him from a payphone, and I'm like, yo, man, I've been trying to get a hold of you guys. Like, what's up? Where are you? He's like, oh, we're on the block. We're about to get some ice cream, man. Come up, yo. Blah, blah, blah.
He
didn't give a fuck
Yeah,
about...
you're having a different kind of day.
Yeah, like everybody had a different experience because
Yeah.
nobody really understood. But being that when we go to 6th Ave, it has that like canyon-esque view.
Yeah, it
It's
really
like
does.
All the buildings are on the side, and the towers used to be right in the middle.
Right.
So if you were there were people parked in the middle of the street, just like looking down.
And 6th Ave, even more than any of the other avenues on the west side, it really is this like it's like Wizard of Oz down
Exactly, it goes
the city,
all
like it's
the way down.
It's a straight
so
shot.
the towers were at the end of that shit, but there was nothing. Them shits were just wrecked. Like it was just
Wow.
mayhem down there. So I just walked and I didn't look back. I just kept walking uptown, and I remember I kept thinking you could hear the trains under because they weren't running, but they were moving trains underground. Like they kept trying to get trains that I guess stopped in the middle of the shit.
I mean, people must have been stuck underground for hours.
Yeah. So they were moving trains underground and like switching tracks. You could hear all that shit underground, and it was just weird. Like the streets were dead. Shops that you saw all the time were closed. I had a Discman that took like 4 batteries, and that shit died on my way uptown. I was so mad. But that shit was just scary. Like, yo, what the
Those things
fuck?
would tear through batteries.
Yeah. And then like I'm walking. Every time it fucking hits your leg, it skips.
Yeah.
That anti-shock shit was fake.
I remember being I went to school not too far from here, Bread and Roses, and I remember when it happened. I had actually my science teacher, a guy named Mateo. My school was like, oh, call them by the first names.
That is
Yeah.
hip and edgy. Yeah.
Progressive back then,
Very,
especially.
yeah.
And I remember he's the one who kind of like said, oh, that was just a second attack. And like he kind of pieced it together. Mm-hmm. And I remember just being there. Like I remember who I was with, Eduardo, Lewis, who I used to call Gupta. And like I'm just like, oh man, I think that sounds like, I already had the idea of knowing that sounds like war or something.
Yeah.
If that's happening. So I'm like, all right, I just put on my music. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to nothing. I'm not going to do classwork.
Yeah.
If, like, the country's at war.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was going to be, you know?
Right.
But I just had that as, like, in the 9th grade, thinking, like, man, I'm not doing this work right now.
Yeah.
Like, and then you find out. And I remember the creepiest thing to me was, like, I got stuck in school. They didn't let us leave because they were, like, there was, like, a police station right next to it.
So that's literally where I live now.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Right there.
I see that school every day.
So, they kind of like locked it down, and then I'm stuck in there. I remember just hearing like nothing but like
The
fighter
bombers,
jets
right?
finally going over the head,
too.
and I that was like confirming in my head. I was like, man, I'm telling
Wow.
my friends, like, I was like, man, I'm pretty sure this is like some, like we're being attacked, like
You're in a war zone.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
in a war zone. In my head, I'm like, I don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
but I understand history at the time a little
Yeah.
bit. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. You see
Yeah.
all the,
Yeah, you can hear
yeah.
it right over you.
What were they
Shit
doing?
was-
Just like
It was just going
checking the
down.
airspace?
When they finally got scrambled, like
Yeah.
it was actually hours
It
later.
was like 3 hours.
Yeah, but when they finally got scrambled, there was so many of them going over the city.
Wow.
So you could see them like, oh, they're really like,
Wow. I didn't.
Yeah. That shit
Yeah.
was scary.
it was
Yeah.
spooky.
It was bugged out, man. It was a weird day.
Yeah.
And then when we get back uptown, I meet up with you guys. No, you came later.
Yeah.
I met up with Daniel, Gio, Kevin, and we go to that pizzeria right there on 103rd on Amsterdam. And you remember it was like a Mexican spot that served pizza.
Yeah.
Mexican, it was a big pizzeria
Little
ran by
fusion.
Mexicans.
Yeah.
So they played nothing but Spanish news, and Spanish news does not hold shit back.
Wow.
So Spanish news was showing everybody jumping. And that shit was...
Well, there you go. People who are saying it was
Yeah.
edited after the fact.
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah,
watch
no,
news
it's
Go
from
look
outside the
at
country.
Univision.
Yeah.
Spanish news was not
Univision.
fucking around.
Yeah.
And you
They're
just
done.
saw like, that footage was brand new. You just mad people jumping, and I remember being like,
Wow.
"Fuck, dude."
Yeah,
And
it was
the next
creepy.
day, we tried to walk down there, and then we got to I think we got to 30 something street, and we could smell it,
Oof.
and we
And
just
you
turned
couldn't
back.
walk past.
Yeah, we turned back.
Yeah,
They
everything
wouldn't let
was-
you go past a certain point.
Yeah, we walked down there like the next day, and it was like the
Wow.
deadest
I bet.
I'd
You've
never
seen
seen
the
it that
city.
dead until COVID.
until COVID. again.
Really?
COVID
I was going to
happened-
say COVID or Hurricane Sandy or some
It was the
shit.
same exact feeling,
Yeah.
like nobody outside.
Yeah, that shit was.
It's
whack.
so eerie. I mean,
Yeah.
I can reference it. But, like, in this one, it's like with the smoke and the burning smell and, like, chemicals and whatever
just
else is
knowing
going
what's
on.
going on. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a rest in peace to everybody who
Yeah,
Yeah, man,
truly.
it's
Yeah.
24 years. Well, 23 years tomorrow.
23 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that long ago.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's actually,
20 years goes by pretty quick.
So quick.
Yeah.
I'm like a little bit alarmed by, like, I know the headline is not like how long it's been for the rest of us who are still alive, but
Yeah.
it does feel like I almost can't account for what happened since then.
Yeah, 2
Yeah.
decades. Like what?
Yeah.
I feel like it's been
Like
like
that.
8 years.
Yeah, that feels right. Like, it's not like didn't just happen, but it wasn't so long ago that, like, you're describing Discmen and we didn't have cell phones. I'm like, oh, you're right.
There were payphones in the street.
Yeah.
Like,
Having to
legit.
use a quarter.
Yeah,
and a payphone,
yeah,
hoping somebody picks up.
yeah.
Yeah,
Used to do the collect call trick.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
ever heard?
Hey, 9/11 happened.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah, that's really what people used to do. Like, that shit, bro. It is, now that you're talking about how long ago it is. That is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
Life flies by, man.
It does.
a lot of that footage went kapoof too. Like when they got rid of the certain, like, you remember Real Player and like certain players they used to
Like
on the internet.
on the internet, right?
Yeah, once that shit got like taken out, a lot of videos went with it. There were videos that never were found again from that day.
That's the spooky thing about like information nowadays, right? And, like,
Yeah.
Like maybe this is something you could speak on, like
Yeah.
how it's like it can be lost.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that as you were describing it. It's like we think of, oh, well, it's on the cloud or it's online and
Yeah.
it can't go away. Like, it certainly can, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
I think, rightly are frustrated just from a consumer perspective, never mind our safety, privacy, historical records. It's like, if I buy an album, do I even own the album, right? If I buy a movie, do I have it? And like the software, I just want to like own something and have it.
Yeah, but
What's-
it's tangible.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's much more importantly, it's all kinds of archives that it's almost like the data that we want to go away will somehow live on forever, right?
And
like
then
my
everything
Facebook
else
posts
could
from
be-
Yeah.
2002, whatever.
Yeah, live journal.
Right, yeah, exactly. I think my MySpace is hanging in there. Actually, I think that's down. But plenty of stuff that you think you're saving or backups of backups could for sure disappear.
Yeah.
You know, and there's also digital decay, right? We say it's the cloud, but it's still physically in some server somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you could totally hard drives.
Somebody could actually
someone could.
get into that.
Yeah, not to get all Mr. Robot on everyone, but we
Yeah.
could totally destroy.
Yeah. There's sometimes I come across archive videos for stuff I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, it's right there. Like,
Yeah.
but then you have to like make a request and do all this crazy shit. And I'm like, damn, I'm not doing all that, man. Like, chances are they're not going to give it to you. Unless
Yeah.
you're like, you know.
It used to be the case that, you know, being an archivist or someone who would, like, go to a library and look up the Dewey Decimal System or microfiche or, like, there were more systems. It feels to me like it's much more of a free-for-all online as far as what's saved and what isn't and what's ended up on, like, various mirror servers that you can set things up to save. But it's not as centralized, I don't think, as, like, you know, information sciences and libraries are no longer in charge of this sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you could find, I feel right now, you could find, if you go online and you type in, like, 90s commercials, you'll find, like, a 5-hour block of nothing but 90s commercials.
Yeah.
But in 20 years, you're not going to be able to do that shit for anything now. Because all the commercials are on, like, YouTube ads.
Oh, it's all
They're
digital.
all on Hulu. They're
So
all
it could
on
be
Netflix.
deleted.
Right.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is done. Like, people, unless they're actively recording stuff off the internet right now as it happens, and like making copies of it, it will be gone.
Should we be burning CDs again? Is that what we
Yeah,
should be?
that's what I totally
Yeah,
think.
I'd back up.
I'm gonna get my
I
camcorder out and
have like
let me borrow that Discman. I'll figure this
Get
out.
one of these.
Yeah.
I found like 2 terabytes worth of stuff over the last 2 years, like archive crime stuff and like neighborhood footage.
Oh, yeah,
and
you
stuff
must-
like that. And man, I have like 3 copies of it. I have it on like a hard drive, my laptops, on another hard drive. just
All
'cause
still digital though.
it's all digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could put it on a disc if I felt
Yeah.
like it. But yeah, it's all.
The closest I have is my grandmother wrote all these essays and letters and things, and they're on like floppy disks.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a thing like that I got on eBay or somewhere to connect floppy disks to like a USB whatever. But I
Yeah.
still can't get the damn thing to work. And I know that the data is sitting there on this archaic
Yeah.
technology because she passed away forever ago, and so this is
Right.
mostly stuff that she wrote in the 90s.
Right.
And I know it's there, but I can't get to it. But what I can get to are my high school cross-country track results. And I don't know why they're on there. It's like the Maryland girls 1999 regional. Yeah, oh my God.
It's rough to get a hold of that stuff now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I bought a VCR and I have the same type
Wow.
of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a VCR already. It was my mom's. Like she kept it in great condition.
Good for her.
But I bought this thing called VidBox that connects to it, and you connect it to the VCR, and then the rest connects to the computer, and you launch the player, and it pretty much brings up a window like the blue screen, the old school blue screen.
Yeah.
And you just use that as a VCR. That's how I found the footage of me acting like The Rock.
Oh
I was like
yeah,
12 years old.
that was so funny.
That's amazing.
That's some old school. That's a memory that's like
Yeah,
you probably didn't even know existed, right?
I didn't. It made me
That's
realize
funny.
I haven't changed at all.
Well done to you.
That's still me.
That's doing the people's
Goofy
eyebrow.
ass.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because like I feel like more things should be tangible because that's kind of
Yeah.
like what was that Library of Alexandria?
Yeah.
Like even though I feel like we're not recording the most intelligent things
Right.
these days, like as much as they maybe were, but I'm pretty sure somebody was writing some bullshit like back then too. You know?
Well, I mean, and it gets to the, something that you and I have talked about before, which is just like if there's here the problem is in the current day is like we're all creating so much information that it's not that they weren't creating a lot then, but it's just sort of like the amount of crap that's being put on the internet and the barriers to entry are -2. Like it's hard to not put things on the internet, frankly.
Yeah.
If you just sort of exist in the world and show up in an event, you might have your name somewhere against your will, right? Is that who gets to decide what gets archived, right? And who gets to decide what's important? And so far, it seems like, I mean, I don't know, but it seems like the algorithms are playing a pretty big role in at least what ends up on our kind of collective conscious, which is probably someone will say, hey, here's a roundup of the top things from the internet in 2010, right? Or 2020. And it's going to be whatever, especially now, the algorithms decided should be in our faces, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the same thing as what we would have chosen had we chosen from, say, a suite of 10 things that we could have picked. Right, True. It's just like, oh, we're all here looking at Charlie D'Amelio because that's what TikTok told us to look at.
What they think you want to see.
Yeah. And the more you look at something, the more they are going to send you more like it. And so now we're all getting Hulus about mom talk instead of, cool science stuff like what you guys are doing.
I wanted to ask you about that because, like, you're a data scientist, right? But, like, so when there's these algorithmic programs being created, right?
Yeah.
What subsets of data are they looking at to create these algorithms, and where do they mine this from?
So it's...
I don't know if that's something you could even touch on.
I have a sense of it. It's
yeah.
Despite the fact that OpenAI is called OpenAI, it's not so open that we all know exactly where... You can't just look at the data set, as far as I know. If you can, send it to me. But so all these generative AIs are basically, as far as I understand, collections of written documents from around the internet. So this is like personal blogs, this is news, this is probably not email, though I wouldn't put it past them. It's any kind of article, maybe tweets, and it's just sort of a big body of language. And the way that these things work, generally, they all work a little bit differently, is basically probabilistic. It's like what words often go together with what other words. Oh, okay, if you see these sets of words, the next word is probably this. It's sort of like autocomplete on steroids.
Yeah.
And so the last, I could be wrong about this, but, it sort of builds on snapshots of the internet. And so I think the last update from ChatGPT was not yesterday, right? So say it was like a year ago. So that means that if you ask it about things that happened recently, it's not going to be as good as if you ask about things from a little bit longer ago.
Oh, so it has a kind of different mindset, kind of stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Like a grandparent.
It's like
almost.
a grandparent, yeah.
You're basically talking to someone in jail.
Yeah.
Someone who got locked up, been away for man long.
Yeah. Or who went into quarantine like in 2020 and never came out. It's like, I can tell you everything about like what the hot music was in 2019, but like I kind of don't have much
in a time period
to say after that. It's more recent than that, but that's basically the idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of the thing, if you look at like, what's the one that makes the images? Midjourney.
Yeah.
Midjourney and some of the video ones, it's like that's pulling from people's photos and that's pulling from maybe copyright material. There's some that make music. It's like, where are they getting all this music? And so right now, one of the big conversations is, are we allowed to just take pages and pages? So many books, this is the Library of Alexandria, is like Google Books, right? So many books are just online. And so they're feeding these things to these algorithms. And it's like, it's not yours to give to them.
Yeah, did they
right?
agree to this?
Right.
Yeah.
That's why archive isn't a big deal.
Right.
Not a big thing like that, because they have a ton of copywritten like materials, like books.
Yeah.
Specifically, and authors are like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah. Like, I worked hard on that.
Like, there's books for sale on Amazon, Google, everywhere but this. Like, you can just borrow it. It's like a library.
Right.
You just hit borrow for an hour and it's yours.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, that seems like it goes against the law in some ways. Yeah.
Well, and there is, in a world that you and I spend more time thinking about, or at least that I spend a lot of time thinking about, is like in comedy. I think it's Sarah Silverman and others are getting involved and being like, wait a minute, like you're using all my jokes that were not easy to write to help ChatGPT spit out, ostensibly comedy for other people. Like that also doesn't feel right. But no one knows. I mean, the people who are making the laws are not the people who are engineering these things. And so there's a huge gap.
There has to be some restrictions on it, though. But I feel like right now it's like the wild west with that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just running no matter what.
It's basically what the internet was when, around 9/11, when we all could just put whatever you wanted online. And
you would find websites like that.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, .com.
Rotten.com. Did you go to Rotten.com?
Yeah, you remember that?
Dark stuff. Man. And Hell.com was its own weird thing.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah. Ogreish.
You
I don't know
that?
Ogreish.
That was like Rotten.com, but worse.
Yeah. A little bit of crack involved in that.
Yeah.
That Ogreish was... Ugh.
Yeah, that was like the first time. What's wild is that back then we saw that, we still kind of felt like, whoa. You know, it was kind of like one of those things.
That was something you never visited often.
Yeah. My friends and I would gather around and be like, ooh, it's Rotten.com night. Like, let's go. Like, it get weird. It's like how we used to watch the X-Files in middle school or something. Yeah.
What you guys got going on tonight? Nothing.
Yeah.
You're just going to get a little crazy.
Going over Mario's house, going to watch some Rotten.com.
It takes like 40 minutes to pull up one image.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is you'd get together to do it. You wouldn't, do it online or whatever. My first email I sent, I called my friend and I was like, I sent you an email. And check it now. Like,
you have to unplug the computer and then call up. Did you get it?
Exactly.
All right, call me back in 10 minits.
Yeah.
It's like,
You have to run down to the payphone. Listen, the email's sending right now.
Yeah.
It would take forever.
56K.
56, dude. That's like, you could send one word that much information now.
Bro, 56K is literally just for email.
Yeah.
It's the only thing you can do.
You can't put it, it can't be more than 2 paragraphs.
Right. Try to attach an image or a logo, you're going to break the whole thing.
Now you get like 300 gigs per second for like $50 a month.
Yeah.
Before 56K, oh my God, bro.
People are spoiled. I find that funny.
Because
like, even myself, like, we come from that. But even myself, I get stressed out of like the internet. Like, oh, you're not downloading this in 6 seconds for me?
Yeah.
Just 100 gigabytes? I need this video now.
Like, if I can see the dial moving as opposed to it being instant, I'm just like, something's broken. Yeah. What's going on? I gotta call somebody. Yeah, I need a new computer.
Let my Netflix stop at like 75%. I'm like, fucking cable.
Yeah.
Like, ridiculous.
Spectrum. What's their issue?
Or you just get stuck on 99 for like 3 seconds. You're like, really?
Yeah.
Slow internet today?
Yeah.
Of all days?
Yeah. Whereas it used to be, you'd get faster internet speed. I remember I had friends who were so excited to go to college because the dorms had faster internet than their parents' house. And it was like, wait till you see how fast we can load this image. Oh my God.
It's still,
like
instead of 20 minutes,
whatever.
it's 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a big thing for us. We would get together and download music.
Yeah.
Like, because we used to be in a band together and stuff. So, like, we come from, like, the metal world.
Nice.
And we'd be super young, and it would take... Just to burn a CD, it would take hours.
Yeah. It was a special thing, and then you had it, and you would give it as gifts or whatever for people if you wanted to.
It was a daily activity. Like you had to spend hours to get like a mixtape done.
Yeah,
like 4 hours just to get that shit to burn.
Yeah,
Nero burning ROM. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But it's so satisfying. I mean, maybe this is just all of us being nostalgic, but I feel like the younger generations are missing out because you get a physical thing at the end. You're like, I made a thing.
Yeah.
I never make anything physical anymore. It's just it's a screen crap.
It definitely plays a role. All that, the ease of access plays a role in how everything's absorbed now.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if the internet was around during like the funk and disco and the golden era of like a lot of music, it would have done the same thing. Like, people absorbing new music that we, like, couldn't get a hold of as easily, but just being able to stream that shit, like, on Spotify instantly.
Yeah.
You would have had people, like, at midnight, like, man, that life after death ain't that good. I just heard the whole thing before it drops, you know what I mean? Right. Now that's, like, a common thing. Like, a leak comes out, like, a month. It's like, oh, we already heard the album. There's, like, a new skit on it. It's, like, no excitement for certain shit,
right.
You know?
There's no excitement. There's very, very little kind of build-up and collective countdowns. I mean, that's why, like, Game of Thrones, which was a huge disappointment, not to spoil the whole thing, but it was like, sorry, okay, cut that if you haven't seen it, but it was among the last appointment television moments, because otherwise no one's watching anything at the same time. We're not consuming anything at the same time. It's like, oh, you missed the big release. Well, okay, I'll just watch it tomorrow, or I'll watch it in a year.
What was that called? That's like water cooler moments or whatnot. That you would gather the next day at work or whatever and be like, oh, did you see this?
Did you see it?
Yeah, and there really isn't anything like that.
And it's, there are a lot of forces behind it, but it's one of many things that we used to have in common and now we don't. And so if you think about like political polarization, you know, my sense is that I have friends who I don't agree with politically, and so it's like, well, we used to talk about the water cooler stuff, and now we don't even have that.
Yeah, because now you're on different everything.
Yeah.
Different spectrum of everything.
Yeah, I think the ease of access, man, definitely, because it affects everything. Like now, you can't have those moments, because if you go to somebody, oh, have you seen it? They'll be like, nah, man, I haven't started. I'm going to stream it this weekend, though.
Yeah, so don't talk about it. Yeah. Well, here's a real one. Have you guys seen Severance?
No, I haven't.
All right. Well, so I just watched it. I watched it over the weekend. My boyfriend hasn't seen it. It came out 2 years ago. So either people watched it a long time ago and are not into it. And normally, at least I watch with my boyfriend, but he's been out of town. So I was like, I'll just watch it. Now I don't have anyone. I'm texting my mother. I was like, someone talked to me about this show. And I'm just on Reddit reading posts from 2 years ago.
You see, now, if Severance came out in the 90s, right?
We'd all be on it.
It would have came out 2 years ago, and the box set would be just about to come out this week.
It would be so good. Yeah.
And that would be like the first time plenty of people are rewatching it.
And you'd have like a party to watch it. I mean, Mad Men even was something that people would get together to watch. And
Breaking Bad as well.
Yeah.
Those are like the last three, I would say. Sure.
Yeah.
That everybody had to watch, you know?
Yeah, like together.
Well, and I think the other piece of this is that, again, I mean, I haven't done the research on it, but it seems to me that it's like the ease of access that you're saying, it's like I can go in and find the music, the show, the movie that I want. And the ones that I want are going to be informed by what I used to like or what my friends are telling me to watch. But generally, it's like the algorithms, again, are feeding, well, you watch this, so you probably want to see this.
Exactly.
And so it's like we're not even all exposed to the same things, right? Like there is a greater diversity of things we could watch, which is cool, and it's good for art, and there's a proliferation in a lot of ways. But it's like I talk to my friends, like, do you watch this guy on YouTube? Like, no, I don't. Like, I watch this guy, and this guy has been, like, fed to me because it met. So I'm not even exposed to new music anymore, I don't think, in the way that I used to be, because I can listen to anything. So I just listen to what I know, or what the people I know, what they recommend, and that's sort of it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, opposed to...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, just like, walking into a physical store and just seeing the array of things that a human has chosen that might be interesting, not an algorithm that's like, you watched one sci-fi, here's every other sci-fi that's ever been, which I'm fine with at the moment, but it's like, I might want to watch another genre, but I'll never see it.
Yeah.
So.
It's a little...
it's isolating.
It is very isolating, and I go into like that, kind of like the idea of like, we're programming ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not like it's no overlord no more.
Yeah.
Before, I guess, people used to be, that was like a conspiracy thought, like, oh, you're watching programming, so they're showing you what they want to show you.
Yeah.
But now it's just people in their own, it's basically you stuck in your own head.
We're in echo chambers of our own making.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, each of our algorithms on social media is tuned to what we spend slightly longer lingering on and what we've decided we're going to TikTok or Instagram for, and it's like, every now and again, the big stuff kind of makes its rounds, and we all see the same memes, maybe. I mean, my parents don't, but the other day I texted them, and I was like, are you freaking out about who the guest is going to I on the DNC? Did you guys follow this? This was like a week or two ago.
Oh, yeah, with Beyonce and whatnot?
Yeah, there were all those rumors that it was going to be some big person, and my parents I was like, are you nervous? Are you stressed? And they were like, what are you talking about? Because, like, that was just like an internet thing that they didn't see, and so we're in this whole frenzy.
Right.
And it wasn't even happening in other circles.
Yeah.
And I left the DNC being like, well, where was Beyonce?
Yeah.
My parents were like...
That was the whole thing.
No one ever
it's
thought...
a Super Bowl show.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny because now it's come to a point where there's like it feels like there's two separate versions of the internet. Like if you go on YouTube and you type in something that's going absolutely crazy on TikTok, you won't find that shit on YouTube.
Yes, right.
Like YouTube will have nobody talking about it, but you go on Twitter or TikTok and boom. 100,000, 200,000 views or likes or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, how is this shit going crazy over here?
Yeah.
But over here, it's not. Like, over here, nobody knows about this. And then maybe after, like, a week or two, you'll see somebody start talking about it on YouTube.
Right.
It's bugged out. Like,
which is why, I mean, not to go back to conspiracy theories, but, like, maybe, so the submersible last year, which was so ridiculous when those rich guys got smashed at the bottom of the ocean. I feel like that
Oblivion.
Was one of the rare times where all the platforms were kind of talking about it because it was just so unusual.
It was such a big deal.
And it was such a big deal. And it was a mix of people being like, wait, what? People are going down to the Titanic? Why? Don't we know that that's bad? And other people being like, why are we paying attention to these rich dudes when all these immigrants... Like, and so there were different angles on it, but it was a big enough event that we were all talking about it. Yeah. So that's kind of what it takes for... Because otherwise, you're right, it's different internet. Like... Have you ever accidentally looked at someone else's social media? You feel like you're on another planet.
Yeah. It's something different. Sometimes
it feels, it feels kind of like like you going into somebody's privacy.
Yeah.
And you're like, ooh. You know?
Yeah. You're like, oh, you get these videos? Like, wow.
Yeah. Sometimes people bring stuff up like in a chat or whatever. And
Yeah.
you're like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Like this is going viral.
Yeah.
Like when you started doing the brother,
Yeah.
that didn't hit like the internet for me until like a month later.
What is it? I don't even know it.
Oh, it's just
You see
it's
them
just,
go.
it's just actually it's just some guy. I guess he's like I want to say he's a I don't know if he was like an Islamic priest or minister or whatnot, but he's basically preaching and like he just goes like I forgot what he brings up. He goes, brother, ugh. Like he's just against whatever he was talking about. I don't remember the original clip.
Yeah.
The original clip I never
Like you
seen.
don't even know what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but it's just brother. Ugh. So you'll see people put that under stuff they don't agree with or something nasty. You're like, ugh.
So you said it, and I didn't even understand the context, but then I seen it, and I was like, that's fucking funny.
Yeah.
Like the context that you used it in made sense, and I was like, oh, that's funny. But there's definitely like shit goes way crazier on TikTok and Twitter versus YouTube.
Yeah.
Like YouTube is kind of like the long form content that you go to kind of like tune into your
people
own
with class
zone.
Right. I mean, YouTube used to be if I'm on YouTube, I'm like, good for me focusing on something. Like, and it's just so ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube is just taking over my cable.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I mean, back in the day when it comes to like all the other stuff being kind of fair, you had like a few people who were deciding, oh, we're gonna play Portishead, Nine Inch Nails, Manson, and all this stuff on this 2-hour block on MTV. Take it or leave it. You like it or you don't. That's what's playing. Yeah. Now everything's crafted, like you were saying, toward like your likes. So it's like a blessing and a curse.
Right.
Yeah. Because you can't accidentally fall into some shit that I wouldn't think I would like this.
Like a whole genre that you would just randomly...
That'll never happen again. Everything is going to sound similar to something that you listened to before. Or like similar to that band. Versus like coming across some crazy shit you never heard.
I mean, a lot of these algorithms are basically written. I don't know how they specifically work, but they're basically written to be like, if this person likes this thing, what's the next most similar thing? And that's true on Netflix, and that's true on TikTok, and that's true on all of these things. And so it's like, you're just like, and there's a path dependence to it. So early on, the things that you look at you can really get locked in. And just like, I've never once seen a video about sports on Instagram. I'm sure there are accounts that replay famous sports moments. I've been on Instagram for a very long time. I've never once seen them, because you're just in these little wormholes that are like, oh, you looked at this and maybe it was an accident or maybe it was just kind of interesting, but doesn't mean you want to listen to it all. Like the other day I was listening to some Lady Gaga and then it was like, here are more artists like that. And I was like, just because I like this song doesn't mean I only want to listen to other songs that sound like this. Like I actually, so you can't get that diversity.
There probably will be some sort of streaming platform soon that their whole thing is going to be
random,
giving you the opposite.
Are we going to invent that? I think we
just invented. Well, to go back to the original internet, did you ever go to lighthouse.com?
No.
That's way too dangerous now, but basically you would just send you to a random website.
Oh,
it was just like, let's just find something cool for you that is not connected. It had nothing to do, because Google search results are all the same. It's like, what pages have the most networks pointing into them, or like links pointing into them? So we're all just getting more of what other people have already seen or what I've already seen, and it's all customized to me. And that was just like, here you go. Here's a random website. Because most websites aren't linked to anything.
Yeah. True. That's interesting, actually.
Yeah.
There's got to be something cool out there that nobody's discovered,
Yeah.
There used to be websites that we'd go to. You remember there was one called Zombocom?
I knew you were going to bring
You remember that?
I don't know it.
It was just, you would go to it, and it would just go, it was just a voice going, welcome to Zombocom. This is Zombocom. Welcome. And he's just welcome. That's it. But it's all it was.
For like 10 minutes straight, and it's like this little Caribbean music playing.
It's so funny.
And it's an image of a beach, and you hear water crashing.
And that's all
that's it? Does it loop eventually? Or?
Nah, well, after like 10 minutes of him.
So
it's a long loop.
Him trying to hype you up to the website that doesn't go anywhere.
You would just send it to people. Yo, check this out. Welcome to Zombocom.
Yo, you peep this website? There's nothing to do on there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's so funny. I have to ask you, because like, you pay attention to like different sets of data.
All right.
As a data scientist, like, is there anything that you may have looked into that you find like interesting and like very telling with patterns on humans and whatnot, or like, I don't know what data sets you actually look into.
Yeah.
I know data is such a broad.
Right.
It's such a broad topic. The
right.
way I look at it, it was like data could be anything from us, the way a workout routine.
Right.
You know, my glucose meters, the way my eating patterns.
Right.
But,
no, we're all generating data all the time. There actually is a comic at the Pair who used to do data analyses for Fitbit.
Yeah.
And basically he had access to everyone's, like, how many steps everyone is taking, and basically no one walks on Christmas Day. You're like, oh, cool.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, it checks out. So I do a lot of social data. So data about, like, social and political stuff. So I do a lot of stuff with political polls. And I do a lot of data about. Well, I recently I'm doing an episode of a podcast that I'm working on called Behind the Data.
Yeah.
And it's about different data sets in the world and what's gone into collecting them. And so you would probably actually know more about this than I do, but I've been very much in a rabbit hole of crime data recently and trying to figure out, even answering the question, is crime going up? Is crime going down? Is a very difficult
That's always an interesting
question, and it's very politically motivated. You can find data to support any argument you're trying to make. So I just interviewed someone named Jeff Asher, who runs it's called Crimealytics, and basically it's a crime database. He's based in New Orleans, but it's national. And basically what's interesting about it is the reality of a crime taking place versus what ultimately ends up in a spreadsheet that someone analyzes. Again, I'm like stepping on your toes here, but it's stunning to me how many ways you can fall out of that flow of like something happened to me or I committed a crime or I saw a crime. You have to report it. The cops have to show up. You have to still be there. The cops have to agree with you that it was a crime. They have to write down that it happened in the way that you said that it happened.
Right.
Then it has to go into a database, and then it goes up, and then maybe the FBI has it a year later. And so just we make policies and politicians yell and shout and scream and make a fuss about the Democrats are causing this and the Republicans are causing that, and it's like we barely can track what's going on.
Yeah. Despite
all the fancy AI and all the algorithms, a lot of the data that we build it on is pretty rudimentary and relies on some cop showing up and writing something down the right way on a piece of paper.
It has to be like organized and put into a certain set so that it can actually make it to those statistics. That's why you'll hear a lot of people, oh, shut up, the city's not that bad. Crime went down the last year. It's been down 20%. You're like, it's been nothing but more shootouts somewhere like the Bronx.
Right.
The reason for that is because it's being reported more in those areas.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it works both ways. Like, it's definitely what you're saying. Like, that shit gets lost in the shuffle, like, a lot.
Right.
So it could look like there's no crime rate or the crime rate's going up or going down, but then you look at the evening news and it's like every day the crime is getting worse. And you're like, what the how?
Well,
like,
Yeah, and the patterns, that you're talking about, like the surprising pattern to me, or maybe depressing pattern, I should say, is that it all reflects underlying social realities, right? So it's like the types of crimes that are more likely to be reported, the types of people who feel comfortable calling the police if a crime happens are going to be certain types of people. So, for example, sexual assault and rape is generally thought to be largely underreported relative to how often it happens because it's a sensitive thing and you may not feel comfortable involving mostly men to show up, right? If you're a black person, you're much less likely to feel comfortable calling the police if there's an incident, right? And so because you live and you're looking around and you're seeing what's happening, but that is not the same thing as saying it's ending up in the data set.
Yeah, actually recorded information.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it absolutely reflects and reinforces underlying basically social patterns and social injustices and systemic differences. I mean, there's all these other things too about, and this isn't my research, but algorithms and algorithmic bias, right? We're talking about like recommender systems, but people use algorithms for all kinds of things, like whether to give someone a mortgage or a credit card or approve them for whatever. And there's a really great study, maybe you guys have read it, from ProPublica that showed that basically all these algorithms are super racist. Because they take all this data from the past. So algorithms live in the past. They drive through the rearview mirror, right? They say, here's all this data about all these people who, let's say, applied for a mortgage, or applied for a loan, or applied for a credit card, and characteristics of them, right? Their income, when they applied, how old they are, this, and then whether or not they got it. And so all we do is we say, hey, machine, here's a new person with these characteristics. Based on the past data, should we give them a loan or not? And the machine would say yes or no based on the previous data. Right. Well, it turns out that humans generated all the previous data because a bunch of humans who are racist or sexist or ageist or whatever are sitting there being like, you don't get a loan, you get a loan, you don't get a loan, you get a loan. And so we've trained the machines to be as racist as
to reflect
we are.
that part
Right.
of us.
Right.
Yeah, that
They
bias.
set that in stone
Exactly.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
now it's catching up.
And the same thing for the ProPublica one in particular was about judgments on whether or not someone gets parole after they've been in prison for a crime. And basically it was like, well, it turns out that back in the day, to this day, judges are more likely to give white felons parole as opposed to non-white. Mm-hmm. And so if you feed all that data into a machine, the machine says, oh, okay, if this person is white, grant them parole. If they're not, don't. And then it turns out that even if you get rid of the explicit column of data that keeps track of someone's race or ethnicity or whatever, the various other aspects of where are they from, what is their name,
is enough.
what is their income, you can triangulate it. And so the computer is still like, oh, are they from this neighborhood in this income bracket? No parole for you. So you're just actively reinforcing. And it's so tricky because you're like, well, it's data, it's unbiased. Well, it's machines. How can machines be racist? And it's like, well, it's data that reflects a biased reality fed into a machine that's been trained according to our patterns.
Yeah,
You're like, okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
I got really worked up about that, but it's
No,
like...
no, that's interesting.
It's so fucked up.
Yeah, it is. So it makes me kind of like, actually like spooked out. Like,
Yeah.
It feels like going back to regulations, it feels like we shouldn't be implementing these things because we haven't figured out ourselves.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's like, I don't know. That's spooky.
Well, and it's the gap between like, you know, the gap between like what machines can actually do, because that's not to say that we can't use machine learning and AI for useful things, but we have to do it with caution, 1,000 grains of salt, understand that if we're looking at city level data, that's not going to capture all these things we just talked about. It's also not going to capture maybe variations. Maybe Manhattan is safer, but the Bronx isn't, and we're not going to get that level of nuance ever, right, in the data sets that we're given, right? So you have to keep all of that in mind, but we're up against businesses and news outlets all vying for our attention and our business by saying we're using cutting edge AI and insights and in-depth whatever. And so we're being told that all these things are fancy and going to save the world, and we're not being told what they're not capable of. And so there's just this mismatch between what they can do and what we're told they can do.
Yeah. With big business, you know, because I feel like, of course, with any big business, it's like, you know, capitalism first. You
Yes.
know? I don't know if you ever worked on something like that or like peered into like big companies like data sets, but how do they like steer it towards like the consumer? You know, it has to be like, it's ridiculous nowadays. Like I feel like sometimes they're in my head.
Yes.
Like what I want to purchase. When you look at I've thought of things like, man, I think I should get this, and then, and I'm like, what's going on here?
For like a year, Instagram kept pushing a company called Ruggable on me, and if they want to sponsor the podcast, go for it. But they kept pushing this company Ruggable, right, to buy machine washable rugs. And I was like, I don't want a rug. I don't need a rug. I'm not going to buy a rug. Like, stop giving me these ads. And by the way, if I ever do get a rug, I'm definitely not buying anything from Ruggable because you're annoying me. And then a year later, I moved and was like, separately, I was like, oh, I need a rug. And like, oh my God. Like, it probably knew because I was looking up apartments a year prior, and it knew. So you're absolutely right that the things that are being tracked, and this goes back to like, we can't seem to guarantee saving the things that we want to save necessarily. You know, I have 3 hard drives and backups and all of this, and I'm still not sure that I'm going to be able to hold on to it. And the time I randomly clicked on a mop is still haunting me 6 years later because it thinks I want to buy a mop, right? And so I don't know, you know, each company is doing its own thing, but these targeted ads and the fact that you're tracking purchases and behavior across a number of different platforms. I mean, Google and all the rest, they're all advertising companies, right? They just sell your data to other people, to companies. And you know, the goal of Facebook and all the rest is to just keep you on the site. And so they're just going to go out of their way to find things that they think that you want or that they think that you're going to want. And I don't know what is being tracked. You know, I study this stuff a fair amount, and I have no idea. I have a friend, a colleague at NYU who'd be great on the show, Meredith Broussard, who does a lot of work on like algorithmic bias and how machines are not as intelligent as we think. And she has said that she tries to not give Google any information like Google Maps. Like, she tries not to use it. She keeps her location off on her phone. She never enters her home address so that like it saves it as home, because she's like, they can all figure out where you are and what you're doing and what to sell to you.
Yeah.
But even she is like, I don't know, it's kind of annoying to retype in your own home address every time you want to get directions.
It's
somewhere.
almost impossible to avoid it.
Yeah.
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 Which we got to get on because I got to figure out how to wipe my Google searches, you know?
Yeah, right?
Before I die, you know?
Yeah, I know, this got to go. Yeah.
I don't want that coming up, some algorithm in the future with me, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want the Mario algorithm. I have to ask you because I saw, I just went to see a show that you performed at Caveat, right?
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, for sure. It was awesome. And like, you know, you yourself, you do stand-up. You're a circus performer. She does like fire tricks and like it's like so she got this whole different side, like you know. Is that something that you see? How many like other like people in sciences and whatnot have that side to them? Because I feel like, do you run into people like that?
I do now.
Yeah.
I didn't always, and the two kind of big reasons for that, I think, are one, I do think it's become more acceptable to be doing more than one unrelated thing, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because we all contain multitudes and we can be interested in lots of different things. But when I was in school, it was like if you had any evidence that you were thinking about anything other than your field, forget it.
Yeah.
And even in comedy now, right? If it looks like you care about something other than comedy, people are like, oh, well, they're not serious. Like, they're not in on it. Okay. So that has changed a little bit. But I think I also am biased because I tend to find other people who are also doing other things.
Yeah.
So they're definitely still a minority, at least as far as what I've seen in the world. But there are a bunch of scientists out there that I have since become friends with. Like a friend of mine is a neuroscientist who's also an open water swimmer and a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I have another friend who's an anthropologist and like I don't know what she is. She's sort of like a burlesque dancer in a way. It could be that scientists are all losing their minds, and so we all just have to start doing weird stuff. But
information's too much.
Yeah, I mean, but you guys are the same, right? Like you're into music, you're into comedy, you're like a crime archives expert, you're podcasting. Like, I think times are changing and for the better that you can do multiple things.
Yeah, you could be a little more of yourself.
Yeah.
I kind of bring that up because like so with your show, for taking something in like I feel like science and whatnot, depending on the communicator of it, it can be boring.
Yes.
You know, and I'm into it. You know, and if it's somebody trying to teach you something and it's dull, you just don't take that in. But what I noticed about your show is that it's presented with humor, and I know is that doing stand-up comedy has to play into that, you know. And I feel like that's way more palatable. So like, do you bring that to like even like more serious presentations? Because I know you've been in front of like actual like, not just like clowns like us.
Not clowns. Thanks for saying that. No, I agree with you about science and science communication is like, I agree that there's a lot that's awesome, and you and I send each other like memes and posts and accounts, and you've introduced me to some really cool accounts and post stuff that's awesome. So it can be really well done, but there's a lot that's so dry. Even stuff that I find so interesting, I've been like, oh, I can't get through this, right? And then there's another tendency of like, to get people, and I've fallen into this trap too, is like, oh, I want to get people to pay attention to this. I'm worried it's going to be dry, so I'm going to go too far. And all of a sudden science becomes like baking soda volcanoes and blowing up balloons and, you know, like we're crazy stuff.
Popcorn and stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, that's a time and a place for that. But most of science is like sitting around and kind of like staring at stuff. And like, so it's not necessarily that hyped up. So I indeed am trying to incorporate comedy. I don't have the balance right yet because it's sort of like, is it 50-50, funny and informative? And for me, when I land there, which I fear I do a lot, I feel like it's neither that funny nor that informative. So I've been playing with the ratios of like, maybe if it's 75% serious but like a little bit funny.
Yeah.
Whereas like someone I really look up to is John Oliver, and he's not talking about science, we talk about the news, and it's like, man, I think he's hit the right sweet spot of I learn about something like attorneys general. And it's super funny.
Then he'll drop a punchline, yeah.
And I don't know quite what that ratio is, but I like what he's doing. You know, The Daily Show kind of lands there a lot of the times, too. Whereas I would say like a late night show is much more funny and a little bit of news. So I don't quite know where I want to be, and I've certainly done it wrong. So, for example, so I taught at NYU for a long time, And I would try to liven up my lectures, in part because I've given the same lecture 1,000 times and I can't take it. So I'll put a Game of Thrones meme in there and mix it up, whatever. And no one bombs harder than I do in front of students, man. Like, it's just dead eyes. People, like, we hate this.
Yeah.
Or they think if it's fun, then you must not be learning. And so sometimes the humor can work against you in that way because you kind of need to seem a certain level of, like, serious for someone to pay attention to you. But then other times and in different contexts, if you're dry and serious, which I've also done, no one will listen at all. And so I don't have the answer, but I'm definitely interested in that intersection. It sounds like you guys are too with this show, right? It's a mix of serious things and then, like, whatever this guy's up to.
Christopher, our dummy over there.
Yeah.
What do you think, Christopher? What information?
Yeah.
What's the data set on dummies' lives?
Yeah, he's like, crash dummies probably aren't representative.
He's still mad he hasn't been a guest.
Yeah.
He's our next guest.
That's great.
Yeah, and this is another thing I gotta ask, because, like, I feel like I get busy, like, and I'm sure you do too. Like, I feel like time sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like no free time to do what you really want to.
And somehow 20 years have passed.
Yeah, and you seem like somebody that's super busy.
Oof.
Like, how do you even let loose? Is the artistic side the let loose, or is, like, when do you do nothing?
I do nothing a lot.
Oh,
I'm sorry to say. Yeah, I like that I seem busy.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time, like, sitting around. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's. I'm very lucky because I'm able to kind of make my own schedule, and so I do spend a lot of time working on, like, a website or editing a thing or slides for a show, and so there's a lot of. I'm alone a lot of the time, just, like, sitting and staring at a screen and trying to figure out what it is, or if I'm doing, like, some actual work with data or whatever. But it's very solitary, and so when I'm on stage, as you know, at comedy, that is my social time, and that is when I see other people. So I don't really hang out with friends, sadly, unless there's a microphone. Like, the last time I think you and I hung out outside of a comedy club was
Probably
when we did this show, your show last time, right?
Yeah,
That sort of thing. So I don't do a lot of, like, nothing, but every now and again you basically just have a day where you, like, die, and that's when you watch all of season 1 of Severance in one sick, warped weekend.
And then get stressed out anyway.
Yeah.
I watch shows while I edit.
Yeah, same.
Like, I'll be editing a full-blown video, and I'll have, like, I just started watching Power because I got tired of people here talking about it so much.
I haven't seen
Power.
And
I've been judging that show for years. Like, this shit is trash. It can't be that good. Like, why? Because there was a certain group of people who kept telling me about it, and their track record at work was whack. Like, you already put me on to some shows I didn't like, bro. I don't want to waste my time with this shit.
Yeah.
And then finally I said, all right, let me give it a chance. And now it's like, it'll be playing here and I'll be editing here. So, much like what you said, my social time is when I come over here.
Yeah.
Because the other time, like, I'll be home doing nothing but still, like, thinking about what I'm doing next. Or, like, writing random notes for, like, the next video and, like, reading.
Yeah.
Like, I don't read books, like I've said before, but I've read, like, so many articles that it's like, I read a lot now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. It's the same thing. Like,
yeah.
Constantly, like, if I'm here being social, it involves a mic.
It's the fun time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even on my way here, when I lost my Metro card on the way to the subway, I literally had 1 block to walk, and I just went from having it in my hand to not. I was thinking about website copy for a series of, like, data science and politics shows that I'm going to do in October. You're all invited.
Nice.
And I was thinking about how to, like, a blurb for the show. And then I got to the turnstile. I was like, I don't know where my Metro card is. Like, because I was just, like, so lost in thinking about that. And then I had to retrace my steps and text you in a panic and be like, I'm going to be a million years late. Because you can't turn it off. Right?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true.
It's always the next thing. You know?
Yeah, it's something that's always in your head. Like, I always have my phone taking notes, leaving voice notes. I'll randomly hit you up like, yo, we need to do a skit about this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just always there.
I mean, but I almost, and I don't know if you have this problem, and if you don't, tell me your answer is, like, I almost have too much. We're talking about too much information. I have too much on my phone. Like, I have so many notes.
Yeah.
Voice notes. I've never once listened to a voice note I've left myself. And I have hundreds of them. What gems are in there? I don't know.
I've gone back recently into some old voice notes. Boy, hilarious.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I was like just in another state of mind.
Ah, nice.
And I'm just listening to this shit like, yo, You were really bugging it.
That's how I feel about my notes. Like, I'll write just like a tagline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, this can't make no joke or a bit about this. And I'm like, what am I talking about? Oh, aliens. They're really tall and skinny. Like, I feel like I could beat one up.
What does that mean?
And I'm like, all right, what was I thinking about beating up? Like, it's
Beating
just
up a tall alien.
random dumb shit, yeah.
I do, every now and again, I do ketamine infusions for depression, and really helps. If you ever want a recommendation, I'm happy to peddle it. But you're being in a different state of mind reminded me. One time I was like, I'm going to film myself on ketamine while, like, on the IV. And so it wasn't, like, a nonstop, but I just made all these short little clips. I was like, anytime I feel like, I'm going to just share what the experience is like. Because after it's done, you're just sort of like, it's hard to explain. And I went back to watch them, and it was just me being like, actually, I think Taylor Swift is pretty good. And I was like, that's all this. All that was like in another universe, and that's all I recorded was just stupid shit.
You think you're out there, but it's like you're just doing something
I'm a little
really calm.
Embarrassed to say I like her music. I'm like, what am I doing? And I was whispering, and it was just not good.
I once got caught up taking a selfie video, and then in the background, I see my Max Payne figure. Like, I have a statue of Max Payne holding a gun. Yeah. And I, like, started focusing on it.
Yeah.
For, like, 10 minutes, I was like...
What is that?
Like, focus, like, you just see half my face, and I'm looking at this shit like, what's wrong with you, bro?
Yeah.
Like, where the fuck were you? Where was your brain?
Yeah.
I have a video of, like, probably the second time I did, like, 5 grams of mushrooms. And in my head, I was out of control.
Yeah.
I was...
Yeah.
I was just being weird. And then if you look at the video, I didn't even want to watch it. Like, our mutual friend Albert, he's like recorded it. And when I see it, I'm literally just sitting there.
That's so funny.
And it's just one dog in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, everything's doing something. I thought I was like really tripping out. I'm just the calmest
just sitting
ever.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was this sad little Taylor Swift video. In my mind, I was like part of like a changing banner of colors and like uniting the world, and it was all this amazing stuff, and then I'm just like mumbling in the camera. It's ridiculous. And this is the data that we're never gonna get rid of.
Yeah,
right? Like,
this
we're never
is what
gonna
will stick there.
That's gonna live on forever and ever.
That's gonna be around forever.
Yeah.
When they make the Andrea bot.
Yeah.
And the Mario by Jose bot 2,000 years from now based on our old algorithm.
Yeah. Just you sitting very still on mushrooms. Yeah. I'm rambling on Taylor Swift.
This bot is out of control.
Yeah.
All right. As Andrea, thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you? What are you doing next? Like, if this will be out on Saturday.
Hell yeah. So I have a couple things going on. I have a show at Caveat, a theater in the Lower East Side, and it will also be live streaming globally. It's called How to Win an Election, and I'm pulling together all the best data science and political science that I can find on what we can do to help win an election. Nice. I'm trying to be nonpartisan, but it's probably obvious where my political leanings are just by looking at me. But so things like what does the research say about like how to get out the vote or how to fight misinformation and stuff like that. And I also have a new podcast called Behind the Data, and our first episode just came out. It's about political polls. When do you believe them? Are they correct? Are they informative? And you can go, so for both of those shows, the election show is at electionshow.vote, and Behind the Data is at behindthedatashow.com.
Cool. And when is the show? Oh, it's like a show.
A show.
Oh, all right. I thought it was live.
No, it is live. Yeah.
All right. So what date is that?
So it's there are 5 of them, and it's Sundays at Caveat.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. In October and the first Sunday in November.
I'm actually gonna come check that out.
Come check it out.
That would be awesome.
I got some discount codes if you guys want.
Oh, nice.
Not for the rest of you, but yeah.
I'm Mario Benitez.
I'm Jose Ortiz.
And that's been Andrea Jones-Rooy. Check her out, guys. We'll see you next week.